Awesome. Don't forget to mention your PI preference and your gender pronoun if you like to. Without further ado, I call upon Prime Minister. Here.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, love is a very complex thing, right? But I think in the current status quo, there's an emerging idea that the spark theories often gets a bad rap because people call it the fairy tale romance, and that it is impossible for someone to fall in love with a person just from a mere first encounter. The problem right now is that people consider this theory, and people who believe in this theory rash or even harmful because of the idea that how can you be attracted to a person when you don't even know what they're actually like, and have no similar interest to you. But we believe that this is highly possible, and that it is already happening in the status quo, because a lot of people actually most people actually experience this attraction at first sight, right? Like, call it an instinct or like even fate, but this theory commonly happens because it is actually normal, right, to feel instantly attracted to someone you find attractive the first time they walk into a room. Like, this instant attraction is what basically pushes people into introducing themselves, for example, and like flirt with this person they find attractive. um First of all, I want to characterize what this spark-based love might look like, right? Outside this spark-based love are often outside of a person's comfort zone. Maybe it is someone outside of your league, or maybe someone you've never met, someone you never thought of, like be attracted to. And this person also possibly have little to no similar interests with you. There's a difference in background, maybe. You feel instant attraction, whether it is from a physical aspect of this person or from their personality. And this love will feel exciting because you feel like, because there's close to no similarities between you two, there's possibly like new things you can learn about each other. And and we want to say that this relationship, like any kind of relationship, even though a lot of people might feel like this is the one, like that's how most people feel like, but it doesn't have to necessarily last forever. And what the first question that we have to ask here is like, how does love develop in the first place, right? What is love? Like I said earlier, we believe that in reality, love blooms from that initial spark, initial attraction, that initial, "Ooh, who is this person? Like, I want to get to know them." This initial wondering, like, what is this person like? This questioning, like you want to build something, you want to get to know this person, you want to have you want to build a relationship, or possibly even a home. You want to get to know them, you want to protect them, you want to find out what this person is really like out of the public eye. You want this person to know this person intimately. Love is when you meet someone you feel drawn to and you fight for that feeling, like. And with we believe that, in a way, because of this, we believe that spark-based love promotes it is we prefer spark-based love because, in a way, we believe that it also promotes self-improvement. Let's get like, we don't give spark-based love enough credit, right? I want to give you a comparison, right? In a choice-based relationship, you basically most of the time, this person you already know, maybe a childhood friend or like someone you're close to. It only allows you to stay within your comfort zone, which leads to this fragile idea of love, because you're only in love because you have something in common. You only have this feeling because you are building the blocks on something that you have known previously. This, on a worst case scenario, right, leads to attachment issues, a codependency issue, because you're too comfortable in each other's zone. So when you finally get out of this relationship, this choice-based relationship, you suddenly feel lost because you have lost that someone you usually had this certain intimacy, someone you feel the most familiar to. Yeah, in a sparks-based relationship, familiarity can be built, but because you are so different, because you possibly don't have the same interests, because you have different personality, for example, there will always be this kind of enigma, or this how do you say it, this excitement. So like, when you're dating a person, when you love a person that have something that differentiates yourself to them, you you won't risk this loss of common ground, because um your relationship will grow and grow, because you constantly have to meet in the middle. If this person likes fishing and you don't like fishing, to maintain this relationship, you have to push yourself to accept and to and to humor this person's interest, this person's different personality, for example. In a spark-based relationship, the more you need to explore this person, you will be able to build a stronger relationship and potentially even learn new things about yourself, because you are pushed to get out of your comfort zone. You are forced to do things you necessarily not like, and not feel comfortable doing. This in comparison with a choice-based relationship, a choice-based relationship, it also doesn't really happen as often as this spark-based relationship, because how often do you feel interested or attracted to someone you're too close with, someone you see as a friend? Because in a choice-based relationship, it's mostly a friend thing, right? Like, you fall in love with your friend, be attracted to your friend. A lot of people who are friends with somebody, or were also initially interested to be friends with this person, because they want to get to know this person to eventually date them. So even in the status quo, right, I think a lot of people, it is already proven that people actually prefer this spark driven love, and that is why we are very proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for his speech. Spoke for 7 minutes. Now I call upon Leader of Opposition. Here.
Testing, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I will be your leader opposition for this evening. I have no preferred pronoun, so you can call me whatever you want. And if you'd like to POI, you can type it in chat, or you can interrupt me. I will monitor both. So without further ado, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Members of the House, I think our core contention in my speech is going to be that we have duties. We have duties to ourselves to be intentional in the way we love another. We have a duty to be intentional when we develop our relationship with that person, if we are lucky enough to have a relationship. And finally, we have to be intentional when that relationship comes in the form of a family, especially when you have dependents. And therefore, choice approach by which you deliberately develop your relationships with other people so that they improve, so that they become a strong relationship, a strong loving relationship, we think is fulfillment of these duties. Therefore, that is the basis why this is to be preferred to Sparks theory, which is based on an instinctual or emotional feelings, which is good as at the beginning of a relationship, but must needs necessarily be replaced by a choice-based theory to continue to stay with this individual if you want to develop a lasting love that respects yourself, respects your partner, and your family. Okay, but before I move with my arguments, I'm going to have several rebuttals to the argument. The main argument that I brought forward here is that the benefit of a choice-based relationship is that it is real. They say that often people have this because loving your friends is not very common. Actually, it is very common. The vast majority of relationships happens upon acquaintances, right? You get married to people from your workplace, for example. You get married from people you learn about online. You get married with your childhood friends, and so on. And this kind of relationships are fine, and they're based on this very choice relationship. So it is not true to say that the choice framework is less familiar with the Sparks framework. Secondly, as well, and more importantly, is that Their argument is that the spark-based relationship is better because the people, an individual grows when they're part of a spark-based relationship, and because they have to exit their comfort zone. But this seems to me of a very common psychological trick. It's not necessarily true that we only grow if we exit our comfort zone, right? We can grow in comfort with other individuals that we know. Moreover, there is also growth indeed built in the choice relationship itself, because you grow by getting to know each other and getting to try to match interests with these individuals. So a choice approach does not necessarily have to mean that you have to have exact convergence of real interest on each approach, on each and every facet of your life. It's rather that the very compromise, the very joining of interests and so on are based on intentional approach in making a choice of working with this, of loving this individual. And therefore, it is possible for us to also have growth under the choice framework. Moreover, I'm arguing that this growth is going to be better, superior in nature, because this growth is based on a core interest that is based the same, rather than having to compromise on many things, right? Because at the beginning of that relationship, having to compromise is very difficult, right? The value of these individuals towards you is not clear yet. So having a sacrifice on this regard, especially at the beginning of relationship, is harmful towards this individual, because then you don't know your limits yet. By contrast, by choice, you build your familiarity little by little, having compromise and having growth and the small matters first, and then having growth only the big matters when you're ready and we're certain that you're working on. Moreover, this is also superior because when you are certain, when you're certain, you are already in place to know that there is at least some convergence of the biggest areas of your life in which it is unlikely that you can compromise without also compromising your happiness. So we think that this compromise is better in this regard. Moving on to my arguments. My argument is, the first is that when we love, we have a duty to, at least to ourselves, to be intentional about our love. Love is a central part of human experience. Romance, if you're lucky to have them, is often the center of our emotional lives that we invest a lot of time in. In things that are central in our life, we have the duty to treat ourselves well. And our component of treating ourselves well is through being intentional and considerate about our life. Consider other aspects of life that might impact us, such as our choice of career or, if lucky, vocation. Consider a choice of whether we put our down roots in, or choice of friends. In this kind of choices, we often make choices based on deliberate development of understanding of what interests me and how it is important for us. So therefore, this is, by analogy, this is also useful and important for love. In order to respect ourselves, we have to go through the process that is made by the choice theory, which is what? Intentional choice means that we evaluate for ourselves by having self-recognition. We understand what my interest in, what kind of person I would like to be, and then try to find partners that have same interest, that, or actually have to someone that I can aspire to be, and we can know that the growth is going to happen with that person. So that intentionality means that we know that if we have a relationship with these individuals, then we're going to grow as a person, or we are going to satisfy that our interests that we consider are legitimate and important. And that process of self-discovery itself is very important for us in order to be a mature lover, an individual who knows what they want and who knows how that relationship is going to support both what they want and the individuals at the regard. Secondly, also, we evaluate in other individuals based on this criteria, and therefore we understand that this compatibility means you also respect these individuals. And this is likely a fundamental of a long-lasting relationship, which is my second argument. The problem here is that when you have a Sparks approach, then you do not have that self-evaluation because you don't even know why you are interested in that person. This is secondly as well, the reality is that a lot of the spark is gone after a year or after 2 years and so on. And that is not very respectful to the other person, because having relationships means having accommodation, having spent effort, having spent other effort. So therefore, it is better for other individuals and to us if you have long-lasting relationships. The good thing about choice approach is that we're more likely to have long-lasting relationships, precisely because even when the sparks disappear, then we have other things in common, we have practices in common, we have intimacy practices in common that enables us to have that relationship to keep it functioning and keep it going. Thirdly, even if our love is important for us. When we are in relationship, these relationships are often cemented in families, and these families will have children. And it will be better for us if we have children in this relationship. It's more likely that we have a choice approach when the parents are harmonious, when the parents know what they want out of the relationship, that they can model good behavior towards their children, which is also a duty that we have to our offspring to model that good behavior. And choice approach is likely to be better in that regard because we are intentional about what we want out of that relationship. We are intentional about the direction of that relationship, and we're intentional about where our family is going to. This is something that has happened in the Sparks approach, which is why the Sparks approach, even though legitimate, is inferior to the choice approach. And this is why we oppose this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition, for speech. Now I call upon Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the opening opposition state that it is not. They state several points, and the first one is that it's not necessarily true that we only grow outside of comfort zone, and that they can also grow inside of comfort zone, because this is to counter our idea that going outside of the comfort zone happens a lot in the Sparks theory. But the idea that we want to propose is that we grow much more to be a better person and as a better partner outside of it, rather than you do inside of comfort zone. We have the idea here that conflict is dangerous. Conflict is something that should be avoided. But fact of the matter is, the more you have conflict, the more you have argument, you start to realize why you have that argument, why that argument happens, and what could be done to fix it. This is something that is exclusive when you grow outside of the comfort zone, when you other than when you grow inside of the comfort zone. And we believe this growth is much more rapid and much more abundant in the in the Sparks theory. We also believe that opening opposition is mistaken in in the premise in their understanding of our premise of how love works. The Sparks theory doesn't affect how the two begin to delve deeper in love. They still do talk. Develop interest, develop understanding with each other. They still try to learn more about each other. The difference is simply on how they decide why they want to start a relationship, where the choice is basically they try to find the partner they're most comfortable with, while the Sparks basically had the idea of, I'm going to go with this guy. Maybe it is purely based on, maybe it's basically based on looks, or based on their what Sparks. But the idea is, the Sparks theory basically picks someone out, mostly out of random. When the choice, they have to pick, and usually they pick the people they are most comfortable with. And as I said before, the impact isn't to how they begin to delve deeper in love, but to the end result, and how they necessarily deal with their love. So they also state that self-discovery is important in choice theory. But the idea we want to bring is, like I said before, the self-discovery is much more efficient and better we believe in the Spark theory. I'm going to delve deeper into this later. They also state that the spark in Spark theory would be gone after some time. But then the problem is not because of the theory itself and how to implement it, but because in theory, you should have already built a substantial understanding of your relationship and their interest on each other once the spark is subsides. And that's how you begin to build further into the love. The idea here, like I said before, sparks doesn't mean you're going to necessarily keep loving someone based off the spark forever, because that is just stupid. We believe that's not how Sparks theory works. We believe Sparks theory only affect how you encounter love instead of how you delve deeper into love.
Point of
Okay,
information.
so no, sorry. And they also state that choice theory will make better parents, but we believe that Spark approach provides differing opinion and worldview, primarily because each individual as parents start off not knowing each other, not knowing any common grounds. And we believe the differing opinion and worldview is much more beneficial as parents, as it will also teach the offspring many different lessons than those they would receive from people of similar understanding of one topic. So I will start my point by stating how love develops. Love develops through this shared experience with your significant other, facing the hardship of life. being in a relationship or loving someone means understanding how to communicate with them and understanding their wants and needs. Now, this is at first would favor the idea where choice theory is better because it gives you a common ground to start off strong. But the problem here is that love lasts for an entire lifetime. Or ideally, you want to be with this person as long as possible. But the choice theory also means that you wouldn't be able to learn from each other as much since you already know a lot about the same things and interests. In this manner, the sparks theory is much better because there is a lot more of your significant other to be explored compared to if you date or marry someone who you already share an interest or understanding with. And it's not like you can't develop the same interest because, like I explained, understanding each other's needs is a part of love and relationship. So it's only natural that you and your partner will try to fit each other wants and desires, and as the relationship progress, begin to
Point of exclamation.
become the person that the other person also wants, and build a relationship based off that. And my second point is that sparks theory can help form better relationships. The idea of sparks theory is that you and your significant other have to figure out how to deal with life together despite not really knowing much from each other. Well, yes, this means that your initial connection might not be as strong as the choice theory. The sparks theory can help you weed out unstable relationship. What I mean by this is, in the choice theory, you might have a relationship where you're only together due to your shared interest, and that's it. Meaning you're too emotionally attached to separate, but not really sure if you like each other that much. If you really like each other that much. Meanwhile, in sparse theory, you still have the option to separate if you feel you don't match, because there is less similarity and therefore less emotional attachment and shared interest when you want to separate. This prevents you from being trapped in an unhappy relationship from too long. Now, the idea that, oh, you're going to love someone because of spark forever, then we believe that is not, even though that is the misconception of how Sparks theory can be perceived by many people, we believe that it's not the problem of Sparks theory in itself. Rather, it is the problem of the person who believing that, true love kiss or love in first sight should not be developed into further understanding of each other's partner or each other's wants and desires. Now, what is the goal of love? The goal of love is to spend as much time as possible with each other. And here we believe spark theory is much better because it gives you more in the long run. We already talked about how spark theory, though it is a bit shaky at first, promote much more exploration between the two partners. And if you want the relationship to work, the two of you can talk it out and be a much better person, and also build a much stronger relationship, tempered with many talks, fight, but also are slowly understanding each other. In the other side of the house, due to your shared interest, you might not need to talk much in relationship. You no need to get outside of the comfort zone. So when there is inevitably something that throw a wrench into your relationship, you won't be used to talk or fight it out with your significant other. You will see the side of them that you never see before. The difference here is that you never expect this thing in sparks theory, in the choice theory. That's why what motivates you to build, and in sparks theory you expect this a lot, and that's why you motivate to build upon each other argument, each problem, each incident. But in choice theory, since the only thing that binds the two of you together is comfort shared between you two, once this happens, you will be much more troubled and unprepared to deal with it. And that's why we are proud to propose.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for your speech. Now I call upon Deputy Leader of Opposition here.
Am I audible?
Yes, audible.
Okay, my preferred pronouns they. My preferred POI method just through chat. I will teach you. Okay, wait, I'm setting my timer first. Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judges, we think that opening government is just playing on their best case scenario on how by Sparks theory that when they already fit each other, when they already find the common sense of each other, they could have a sense of feeling that how they explore each other's feeling and how these people could have a long run relationship. We think they are too dismissive on what my first speakers already proved to you that when the moment when we love someone, it's first that we should have the intentions in terms of how we want to explore their interest in having their feeling back to us, and also it is not unrequited love. So I think opening government have a burden to prove how under their side of the house whether this is this first feelings is just a momentary feeling and it have a big chances of unrequited love, why it is still okay under their side of the house. Comparatively, under our side of the house, we could prove to you the moment when we love pick someone by choice, it means that we already have a consent feeling each other, that we loving them because we having a common a similar interest, and we have a purpose that for the long run relationships. Okay, I will prove two things on my argument. First of all, why love someone by sparks brings is not inherently better, and second of all, how the comparative consequences of loving someone by choice compared to loving someone by sparks. Okay. Okay, I would like to clarify why loving by choice under our set means. We think under our set of the house, when the moment we loving someone by choice, it means that we want to share someone's our interest. We want to share our time to them. We want to have a tight connections with them. And also this proof in terms of how under our set of the house, like what the first speaker said, that this can be translated into how we have intention to evaluate our relationship, whether or not we our choice is better, whether for the long run relationships are. Second of all, whether or not the compromise that we do to our partner is inherently fruitful for our long-term run relationships. Because our goals here is we think how loving should be mutual, having mutual benefit for each other, not just a temporary feeling. So we think why love someone by sparks bring more harmful? Because first of all, we think this is just a momentary feeling. Like the moment when you just have a shake of love for your someone because you just feeling a mess of them from a moment, like how you appreciate or feel admire their capability, their skill, their appearance, or their intelligence from that moment. And yes, we acknowledge that there is a moment when you have a tendency, you want to explore them, explore their interest, you want to knowing them much more. But we think this is also not exclusive, but this is also happen to the loving someone by choice. Because why this is better under our side of the house? When the moment when you having a tendency to loving someone by choice, it means that you have already a certainty that this kind of partner that you want to having in a relationship is the one that could receive you whatever you are, your condition is, and they will not likely compromise the things with you, because they already knowing that you already having a common understanding about each other. Compared to loving someone by sparks, it means that the moment you loving them, trying to having a relationship with them, it means that you should compromise the things that maybe it is opposing your ideology, for example, your religion, or your race, or your culture, like that. So we think this is hard under your side of the house, because it means that you are when the moment when you are trying to out from your comfort zone, it means that you are trying also to lose this kind of important things in your life. For example, family. The moment when you try to fit with them, but you should change your religion, like that. So we think this is not good in the long run relationship. Okay, second argument, why this is comparative of loving someone by choice is really good, because under our side of the house, we think we already have a tight connections. Like the time we spend together is very priceless. This is like things that we could not get it by the loving someone by spark, because loving someone by spark, it means that you will just have a sort of time, the moment to spend with, because you have a hard time in terms of how you want to finding the similar interest to your partner. For example, like how the more you want to have a good communications, because you should do more approach, do you do more compromise, like how your personality is not fit it with you to making that kind of approach. So we think comparatively under outside of the house, the moment when you want to make approach, it is more easily, because under outside of the house you could have a sense that this kind of job of this kind of hobby is similar to each other, so you can have an interest and have like that. Even if it is a short-term interest, at least under outside of the house, the moment when you are fighting each other, you have a common ground to how to reconcile again and how to make up again. And we think under our side of the house, the growth of the love is far more better, because it is sustainable for the long run relationship. So that's why we brought to propose to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition, for a speech. Now I call upon Member of Government. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. For that, my gender pronouns is he or him, he or her chat, because I don't want it to get distracted. Okay. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. We think that OG are losing in this debate as well. Because number one, they never exactly explain the parameter of the love, right? What kind of love consisted upon, and why love based on theory is problematic. Okay, because the core of their case, like you can get out from the comfort zone and love based work for something that's common, I'm going to fulfill this burden as well, because growing is very subjective, not only how you can only grow, because this like can happen on another platform throughout experiences, not only love as well. I don't understand why this should be the crux of the debate. Personally, even you told about this development of the individuals, panel no, this is not a debate about the self-development, right? This is the debate about love. So the only goal in this debate is very simple. You need to prove how on your side the sustainable of the relationship will be championed, or either you need to prove why on your side you can champion the idea of love, which can significantly better and sustainable. But number two, why you are losing is very simple. No principle on their house. Why love should be unconditional throughout sport, right? This is when CG want to fulfill this kind of things, right? So two contribution on the closing government in this case. Number one, I'm going to talk about the genuinity of loves, why this can be fulfilled better under our house. But number two, I'm going to talk about the idea of why love under our side is far more sustainable compared to all of the opposition bench, right? So my first contribution is talking about the genuinity of love. 3 points to note in here. First of all, we think that under the CG, the reason why love should be unconditional without expecting anything, i.e. the traits, the personality, or the wealth of your partner, for instance, precisely because you wanted your partner to become as reciprocal as possible, right? What on opposition bans the relationship will be manifested? This will be manifested into two things. Number one, I think we should know that humans are basically dynamic, right? I mean, all of the personality, your wealth, etc., is something that impacted throughout a lot of externalities as well. So, for instance, your personality will be changed when you go out to another echo chamber with new people or new friends instead of your own social circle, for instance. These people can give you influence which can change your personality as a whole. In the end, if this happens, your chemistry on relationship contingent on one parameter which can be changed anytime as well. Then this was something that's inherently not sustainable on their side house, because the moment when you change up your personality, your chemistry will be gone with your partner because you seems like not fulfilling their standards, right? Make on the opposition bands, the possibility of how you can exactly get less interested toward your own partner will be bigger, make you cannot get sustainable relationship. But number two, even if you don't buy that argument, let's assume to some extent humans are static. Personalities are never exactly changed. This is still bad. Why? Because you cannot guarantee that your partner will not change their criteria or their standards, right? I mean, rationality on some extent also influenced by your consideration. Your consideration also influenced by a lot of things around you, possibility your friends, your family, etc., giving you much more pressure, like change your consideration or shape your perspective toward one certain criteria, right? If this has happened, then you will feel very broken as an individual on their side as well, precisely because you are trying to be loyal, but you get betrayed by your partner, even you already fulfill their expectations, right? This harm is simple. You will get like internal cognitive dissonance on their side house or mentality pressure on their side. Ultimately, you will always question yourselves because you already did everything that you can, but your partner changed their criteria, right? But you don't know anything about the trait or about which trait or which personality that I need to fix on to attract people on our side house. Second of all, in their entire case, we think even though they create a very well-built consideration and rationality to build on the chemistry-based relationship throughout your preferences, etc., but this is still bad. Why? Because of two things. Number one, consideration built since you were a little kid, right? But also it's shaped by the society standard, precisely like beauty standard on your side house. So the love on your side is very unfair to the certain minorities which don't fulfill the parameter of the evil nature of the birth lottery, right? Your preferences, etc., built on by beauty standard as well. This is precisely why love is unfair on their side house, but ultimately very toxic, right? You'll force yourself to fulfill this beauty standard to be loved as well. Precisely if this happens, then unprivileged individuals like poor one or minorities which don't suitable with their own society interests make them feel helpless in the end of the day, because they cannot change their faces to well suited with the society standard, make a lot of discrimination occur on their side as well. But number two, even if we don't buy that argument, let's assume subjectivity still exists. But the opposition bans this choice-based relationship create negative externality. Precisely, it creates standardization, right? Meaning minority freedom of choices will be robbed even in the love, right? Because your preferences only like limited in the quantity of your own groups, for instance, because it's like only which has the same characteristic as you, right? Even if you can love another person, let's assume from the majority, this is like one of a kind case that happened, right, in the very first place. Love never be genuine on their side house. But third of all, let's do a comparison the exclusivity on our side house. Number one, the way on our side of the house is far more genuine as well. Because understand, spark exists because we cannot choose this one, right? You can love everyone, minority, majority, all of every individuals, and every single part of society. This is why sparks are very inclusive for every actors in this case. We guarantee how on closing government, every individual can get their own happiness and love. But number two, the reason why love should not be intentional is all because you perpetuate not love, but instead a calculation. You expect your partner to fulfill all of your standards. You don't want to sacrifice or compromise if your partner don't have the same interest on your side house, make the relationship on their side house become intentionally bizarre. But number three, the sparks are basically based on your intuition, right? I mean, you cannot spark for every man or every woman that you meet on the streets, for instance. This is like the parameter of your interest. Precisely when you haven't spark with this individual, this is why the satisfaction that OO told us in this case will not exclusively happen on their side of the house, because on our side we still got this, right? Sparks meaning your intuition, sure, that this person can make you happy. Either you like have like soul connection or something like that. That's why this can also make sure that you can guarantee this one on our side house, which leads into my second point actually regarding the sustainability of the relationship as well. So talking about the sustainability in the relationship, right? First of all, the spark are not very easy to be gone as well, right? Because this is like your pure intuition. Intuition is something that touch you at a certain point, unlike rationality, which you use it all the time, right? Intuition exists to preempt something that you cannot do with your own rationality. Which love is something that's abstract. You cannot taste, smell, or touch it. That's why even you can feel it. This is the moment that intuition is necessary. Because regarding of the feelings, rationality cannot always rationalize something as well. Because this is like interpersonal relationship. You cannot see or how these things materialize, right? Where on our side of house we can give much more metric to build sustainable relationships. Number one, we demanded to compromise each other, right? Because we don't know exactly like the ability or the likeness from our partner as well. Then if this happens, you need to spend a lot of time to reveal your partner behavior and one by one, right? Precisely because you are not rationalizing this, then when your partner show their lacks, you can compromise this as well, right? Make you willing to sacrifice if there is like a worst case that happen. But number two, sacrificing is good because in order for your relationship to be sustained, you need to show your commitment on our side house, which are sparks, right? This is an exclusive benefit when we are not expecting anything from our partner throughout the theoretical approach as well. Sparks can show both of your commitment to guarantee your relationship will sustain. You compromise your partner likeness. Love is so beautiful under our side house. This is when you get the mutual benefit that OO wanted to talk about because both sides are compromising each other. Both sides are willing to sacrificing and struggling together. But number three, we think that throughout going to the person doesn't mean you need to have like similarity, like preferences, etc. Right? Precisely because love is coming when you are being usual as well. So when you are spending a lot of times giving comfortability each other with another person, even they don't have the same trait or the same preferences as you can get a love that you are talking about. Make all of the case something that's not exclusive. But second of all, under our comparative on the worst case, if the sparks are gone, okay, let's assume this. Number one, it will be gone in a much more longer time because this is kind of based on your intuition, right? And not direct short time rationality consideration or your standards. But number two, the development is significantly greater on our side of house because you are being usual to face someone which completely have different traits than you or someone that don't have the same standard, right? Meaning this gives you a new nuance or new experiences in your life when you are facing the same person which have same traits when you broke up as well. This can be useful for your life, for instance, when you are meet someone that have like the same trait as your ex, for example. This is something that's exclusive under our house because this also covers the whole that OG need to prove to us, right? But all of the reason vote for CG.
Thank you, member of government, for the speech. I call upon member of opposition. Here.
If you want the POI, just write it in the chat box. So starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this debate from the closing government and opening government just only try to tell you on the best scenario of them case, ladies and gentlemen, because we think that when you are loving someone because just only from your intuition, there is no like basic theory then on how that you actually love these people, because you just only try to see or something like from their side, from their basic, for example, because you actually when you for the example or the analogy that you want to try to buy a book, for example, but you just only try to see from its cover, and this is not shows what is inside of that kind of people, ladies and gentlemen. So in this case, that's mean, ladies and gentlemen, you as the people, that when you are trying to see inside of that kind of people, that you cannot actually try to make sure that what inside of that side of themselves is actually matched with you. So why we think this is important for you to make us like your partner is has a same interest with you, because we think that, ladies and gentlemen, when you in the relationship and you actually have a very big difference from your interest, for example, on your hobby and so on and so forth, this is a very bad in their side of the house. Why? Because, ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine when you and your partner is actually has something different, you have always tried to argument with them. So we think this is not good for the relationship, right? Because we think that, ladies and gentlemen, the sustainable of the relationship is based on their on how they can go, or they do this relationship, ladies and gentlemen. But when you just, for example, as a boyfriend or girlfriend, for example, and you have a lot of problem because only just some a different things that you have. For example, you have a different perspective in one problem, for example, and your boyfriend said A and you say B, and so on and so forth. This is bad for you, ladies and gentlemen. This only makes you that hard to be have a same interest, that will hard for you to be a good couple at the end of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, let's just say it like took an example. For example, you as the boyfriend, for example, and you like playing games, and your girlfriend is not like you to play games. So what happened in this kind of status quo, that you will be trying to get the you feel that I get a pressure from my girlfriend because they not allow me to play a games and so on and so forth. But comparatively, when you have a good hobby and you same hobby on interest, that means you can have a lot of spend time from your couple, right? This is only happen in our side of the house in the very first place, ladies and gentlemen. So in here, that we as the closing opposition, that I would like to give you on the exclusively on the reason on how it will be bad in the OG. Even this is will be or maybe good. Maybe their scenario will be good or bad at the end of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, let's just say that closing opposition, the opening government at the government bench, their proposal is good, for example, and they can be a permanent relationship and so on and so forth. We think this is bad, ladies and gentlemen, because you think that when you have a lot of something different, for example, because they're just only talking about just when you have something like a little bit different, and you can, for example, understand all of that things. Then, but we think that there is no one people that can actually bend the perfect like that. We think that there is something also something different that you cannot accept in your life, for example, because it is clash with your religion or your commitment and so on and so forth. And this is not going to happen in our side of the house. So when you as the goes into the like something like a bigger relationship, ready to get married at the end of the day, this is will bad for you, because you still have something different at the end of the day, because you have a different principle, and your son is also will be confused with which one is they will follow at the very first place. This is will happen at the end of the day on the side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. So we as the closing opposition will provide you on how this at the best scenario it will still be good in our side of the house at the very first place. Let's see on how the comparative in the very first place. Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine when you as the people that only love something as the in this just only view or something of spark itself, ladies and gentlemen. So when you just loving them without any thinking about on how their personalities and so on and so forth, and this only makes you have a very big burden all because all of that things. Why? Because, ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine if you already know that there is something that I don't like with her, because just only I follow my intuition that I will loving them forever and so on and so forth. This is a bad for you, ladies and gentlemen, because, ladies and gentlemen, when you cannot reach that girl, for example, the things that only happen that you will be depressed because all of that things, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen, because you just only try to follow the intuition and so on and so forth, and you think, oh, you are my love, and so on and so forth. This is not good, because you loving someone without any knowledge, without any theory, without any basis base, because this is a very important for us, ladies and gentlemen. So in the very worst case, when they are cannot reach this kind of couple, that it will be bad for them at the end of the day. And then the second one, it will be good for our side of the house if in the worst scenario, because when it be at you, for example, that you cannot reach this girl and you still have a choice, because you don't know, oh, there is something that I cannot accept from my girlfriend. This is okay for us to choose the other person that I can love it again, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very important, because a love at the end of the day, the main purpose is to get married. If you at the get married, maybe you will break up when you already in the get married. This is a big problem that you cannot like try to rewind everything that you have done, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot flashback it, because just only you try to see, oh, you are beautiful and I will have the intuition that I think that you are my love. This is not going to solve at the end of the day, and the happiness is not going to come with you at the end of the day. So ladies and gentlemen, so my argument is simple. First one, that this, when you are just saying something just only because of the spark, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, you watch something or see someone just only from their physique, because they are beautiful, because they have maybe have a good body, and so on and so forth. This is not good for you. This only make the standard beauty. This is why the closing government just say, but the beauty standard this only will happen in the house. Why? Because, ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine if you just only see someone at the very first encounter, for example, the things that you only see just only from the physique, right? So this is very bad for you to accept to just say, this is my love, and so on and so forth. I will pursue this kind of love, ladies and gentlemen, because you cannot just make sure that their side of their heart, right? So this is only make you like the other people will just have a beauty standard that they have to fulfill it, to make sure that there is people will just love for them with the spark itself, ladies and gentlemen. So this is bad for us, and we don't want this gonna happen at the end of the day. The things that our stand is simple, to make sure that all of the people will not gonna regret of their choices. So we need to just give these choices itself in the very first place, ladies and gentlemen. And also, we think that, ladies and gentlemen, the sacrifice is also have to come from each other, or of the both sides, ladies and gentlemen. In the love, that you need to like understand, like you have also need a same interest, more interest at the end of the day. Why? Because in this same interest, you can easily to get something like you meet, you can talking a lot with your boyfriend and your girlfriend, and this is only happen in our side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. So this is what we want at the end of the day. So basically the relationship itself, when you get married, you will easily to survive and sustain your relationship at the end of the day. For all of that reason, I'm very proud to oppose.
Thank you, member of opposition, for his speech. Now I call upon whip government. You're here.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Closing government is the only one that can prove to you on how the genuinity of love will be achieved in the very first place, and also we already proved to you on how the sustainability will be achieved. The sustainability of the relationship will be achieved in the end of the day. We're so proud to win this debate. Before that, let's analyze one by one in each team, right? First one on OG. OG already lose this debate based on 3 reasons. First, they mentioned on how it is normal to be attracted at the first sight, but they also never explain to us the likelihood that this person will have the good relationship and the genuinity in the end of the day, right? Which can lead to better relationship and also like a better love in the end. This is very unclear from OG, since they never bring the reasoning why that can be happen. They only mention that, oh, love is something that you can know, like love is something that's abstract, and this is normal to having love at the very first sight, right? But I think that this is not the point, right? We think that love is still can happen, the love is still can be happen in the both sides. But this is very problematic when the OG sent on how this like love will be also perfect, because they also never explain to us why this relationship or the love in the end will be good for both the partner itself, right? What OG can prove to you is how this relationship will be better, not just mention how the love will be like will be like that, right? We told you on how if using these choices it will be worse, since first the human is basically dynamic, right? Their relation can be changed, since both of them in relationship might change the personality, the wellness, the appearance, and extra. OG also can CG also can have the better improvement on how in our side of the house the considering and the rationality in the relation will be better rather than using the choice in the end of the day. But secondly, OG also bring the idea about the self-improvement. This also an argument that we cannot buy in this debate, right? Because this still can happen in the both sides, and this debate it's not about the self-improvement. So the clash is between the gov and op, is which one that can have the better relation and the love in the end, right? Which this cannot be proven in the OG. But even if this self improvement is something that matter, we think that this can be happen in both. This can be well explained in CG with the better improvement itself, right? How we prove to you on the relationship in the end of the day under CG will be not expecting each other. In the end, if this happens, this will not create much burden to each other in the relationship itself, right? Realize then when you are not expecting each other, your love will be more genuine in the end, and you will can have the better compromisation in the end. Therefore, your love will be good and the relationship will be better. But also a third reason in DPM, they also mention that they will create the stable relationship. We think that CG have better explanation on this argument, right? First, we have explained that the rationality and also the consideration is being better, which can lead to stable relation, right? But then we told you on how this relation will not be a burden, since each partner will not expecting each other. For example, expect in terms of appearance, money, personalities, and so on, right? In the end, this kind of relationship will be not burden you, and this kind of and if this happen, we think that this will be create a more healthy and also stable relationship. But secondly, let's analyze the opening opposition. First, they mention how that in our side the compromising in their side, compromising will be not work, and compromising will be very hard in their side. So they will choose to evaluate each person, right? We think that this argument is very problematic, right? Realize that the value of love is how you can compromising each other, right? This compromise is a key to have a good and healthy relationship in the end. We think that if use the choice, which means that they can evaluate their partner before, we think that this basically people is dynamic, right? As my member has told you, when people is basically dynamic, the possibilities of they having like a bad relationship in the end will be achieved and will be happen, right? Because in the end, when they cannot have like the compromising, they cannot accept the change that they partner make in the very first place. But even if they get satisfied already with their partner, this only happen in the short term, right? Because there are no guarantee that each person in that relation can accept any changes in their partner. Exactly, when this happen, we need each person to have the compromising in the end, right? Because compromising your partner can create the better echo chamber in your relationship. Realize when you have to live forever with your partner, you cannot always expect something to your partner, right? We think that use the choices will be create more expectation to each other. But comparatively, when you use the Spark system, we can have the better relation and compromises. Because at the very first place, you already know that this person is the one for you. In the end, you will realize that whatever you do, you will be ended up with this person, right? Means that in the end, you will understand and you will compromise anyway with all of the mistake or all the flaws that your partner have. But secondly, they mentioned that the love should have the mutual benefit. We think that this is not the value of love, right? The love should be genuine at the very first place, right? Which she has brought to you in the very first place. But even if they will have the good commitment, because they mentioned that they can have the understanding, this does not make sense since at the very first place, when you choose someone, you will have the expectation in the very first place, right? How they have to fulfill this standard as your partner. This can create the bad commitment in the end, because you or your partner can seek someone new that if you're already being changed, if your criteria will not be will be changed at the very first place. Right? In the end, your relationship will be ended as well. The value of love, which you have to be loyal to your partner as form of movement that you love someone, this will be not be happen. But comparatively, we can prove to you on how the commitment can be good since at the very first sight, you already committed compromising and sacrificing something for your partner. In the end, you can more protect your love and your relationship. Let's analyze CEO then. First, they already lose this debate because they don't want to inject to our case that human is basically dynamic, right? Okay, they want same interest of the relationship will be sustained and good. They have to prove to us why in the end of the day, this person can always be static, their personality will be not changed, the criteria will be not changed, right? They still cannot explain the likelihood why each person in your relationship will be this kind of stuff. Exactly, on your side, your partner cannot be loyal, right? Since they cannot have the good understanding and they can change, and change will be happen anyway. But secondly, they never inject to our case on how the consideration and the rationality in the relationship will be bad on their side. We told you on how the end you and your partner will be expecting something in the relationship, and this will be a pressure in the relationship. They never inject to this case. We're so proud to be the closing government.
Thank you, Web Government, for the speech. Now I call upon Web Opposition to close the debate.
Am I audible?
Yes, audible.
If you want to POI, please just unmute yourself, but please be behaved. Don't spam your interruption. Okay. So starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I often get sparks to love someone. I get sparks when I saw the Ariana Grande, for example, or Selena Gomez, for example, and so forth. But it is never be real, right? Because no matter what spark that exists, we still need to be realistic. That I need the one person that understand me, not the one because the first sight when we are see the first time to see them, for example. Because we are talking about the love, and this relation is something that crucial for you. So in my speech are simple. 2 things. First of all, why government bans cannot win in this debate. Then I will respond all of their case. And second of all, the distinction between the closing opposition and the opening opposition. Going to the first, why the government bans cannot win. Look, the both of the government team is talking about the compromising and so on and so forth. Now, because I don't understand why it is exclusive under government team. Because I believe that the idea of the compromising is always exists anyway when you are having the couple, for example, or when you are exist in the relationship, for example, regardless who you are, your couple, this compromising are exist anyway. So I don't think this argument is exclusive, right? And move to the closing government. Look, the closing government case is talking about, yes, human is dynamic, that their preferences can be changing by the externalities and so on and so forth. Number one, preference is something that cannot be changed by the externalities to begin with, right? Let's say on how the hobby, for example, you are like, or even you are love playing the football just because you are since you are kid that you love this football anyway, or even like the fetish of sex, for example, you only love the doggy style, for example, just because there's something that you are only comfort with, and there is no other position that you are love it, for example, and so on and so forth. It is cannot be changed by the externalities at all because it is already exists since a long time ago and always being your habitual to begin with, right? But even if yes, the human can be changed, but let me compare. If the human can be changed, this possibility is also happen under the government team to begin with, right? But the difference is under the side of the house are getting worse at the end of the day. Why? Because you already put so much effort to understand your couple, for example, since very first place, but they are still can be changed, and you are still need more effort again, for example, to understand them. At least in our side of the house, we don't need too much take much effort just because our starting point that we have those kind of the understanding is other to begin with, right? At least even if human can be changed in our side of the house is much better compared with the government team. And second of all, closing government talk about the yes, human under our side of the house, you only can expect your couple to fulfill your expectation, for example. You should notice it's not only the expectation, right? Because the idea of the expectation is when you even don't know who you are couple at all, for example, and your couple is only in your imagination, for example. It is different with this choice theory that you can may see in the context wise. That there is the process, there is the dating process, for example, that is already fulfill your expectation. The moment it's not fulfill your expectation, it's okay for you to find another people, for example. It is proof to you on how the idea of the expectation is not exist in our side of the house. But exactly, expectation is only exist under their side of the house, right? Because this will be exist the moment you only rely with the spark, for example, that this you are expect that the one who giving you the sparks is the one who having this kind of good looking, for example, because nature of human that you want to get the best person the moment you are have this kind of the sparks theory to begin, right? Exactly. The other expectation is only happen under government team, right? Look, let's move to the opening government. Why the idea of the opening government is also field in this debate? Look, the case is talking about the explore and the learning each other, for example, and so on and so forth. I'm not saying that you cannot, but it is impossible for you to be success, right? Why? Because it is really hard for you to be success to explore and learning each other, because it's really different things. Because there are so many different cases, just because they are unable to learning each other and explore each other, just because they are have a different common things, for example, and so on and so forth. But even if yes, you can, but your relation will gonna to busy to focus to learn and learn about your couple, for example, not enjoying your moment inside your relationship at the end of the day. It's going to be bad under the side of the house, right? Looking at the comparative, why the idea of the explore will much be better in our certain house. My first speaker already told you, the moment you have those kind of the common things, for example, it's really easy for you to explore. The moment you are hobby to climb the mountain, for example, there is the time for you to more and more explore to climb a mountain, for example, and so on and so forth. But even if further explore not exist in our side of the house, but it's still okay anyway, right? Because right now you only focus to your relationship and enjoying in every moment, to not only focus to understanding your hobby, for example, and so on and so forth. It is much better in our side of the house. We are not explore anything just because we already have those kind of common things to begin with. But before that, POI.
Yes. So how on your side, the genuinity of love will be can achieve at the first place. Realize that in their side, the genuinity will be get materialized, right?
I refer to you in my distinction why why this case is not exist in our side of the house, right? And next to the opening government first, that they are talking about yes, in our side of the house we only rely with the comfort zone, for example, and so on and so forth. We are still questioning what the harm of only stay on your comfort zone to begin with, right? Let's say on how the moment you have the cycle in your friend zone, for example, that you should find the comfort zone that have one frequency for you, just because we want to prevent you to indirectly hurt your feelings, because you and maybe another friend, for example, will hurt your feelings to begin with. It is still same in our side of the house. The moment we are rely with the comfort zone, that those kind of things is prevent you from indirectly hurt your feelings at the end of the day. Therefore, all the case of the government team is cannot stand in this debate. And second of all, let's say on how the distinction in our side of the house, right, between the closing opposition and the opening opposition. We provide you the exclusive argument is talking about the beauty standard that is also answering the POI coming from the closing government. That is impossible, because it is really impossible for the government team for you to get the spark with the people that, I'm sorry to say, like the with the ugly face, for example, and so on and so forth, right? Therefore, the other of the beauty standard is only exists under the closing government. They are rely with the materialistic, for example, is already most likely to be happen under the side of the house. Why is so important compared with opening opposition? Because as individuals, you do not want to feel pressure just because you want to get in the spot, for example, and so on and so forth. It is much better for us to live is not under the living and pressure and burden at all, right? Therefore, it is still exclusive in our side of the house. Moreover, closing opposition is the only one that breaking the deadlock. Even if in the wrong in our side of the house, the wrong decision exists and you are getting the divorce, was still okay, because you are not feeling depressed just because you are not put so much effort to get your couples to begin with. It is really comparative in the other side of the house. The moment you are getting the divorce, you will get this kind of depressed just because you are always put so much effort inside your couple, for example, and so far. Therefore, it's going to be worse under that side of the house. I'm very proud to oppose.
Thank you, Whip Opposition, for his speech. Thank you, everyone, for the debate. I will need 15 minutes to deliberate, and I will be back in the Zoom meeting. You can guys shake hands virtually and talk with each other in this room. Okay, I came to the conclusion of the ranks. Number one, the first rank goes to opening opposition. Second rank goes to closing government. Third rank goes to closing opposition. And fourth rank goes to opening government. I repeat, first OO, second CG, third CO, and fourth OG. I'm going to compare OG first with CG and then compare OG with opposition bench. On OG and CG, the reason why I cannot give OG higher than CG is because most of the questions that is asked in opening government is answered by closing government. For example, regarding attachment issues. Closing government extend the argument by explaining the reason why attachment issue is so problematic is because individuals can change their personality, their dynamic. There are externalities that impact that, like friends and families, etc. That changes perspectives of individuals. And if that happens, you'll probably get cognitive dissonance, and you can do everything in the world, but your partner can change their criteria and and change their personalities and whatnot. Therefore, the relationship won't work. Second, the question regarding growth and the framings CG brought regarding why growth is not necessarily important. It's not the crux of the debate. And the most important thing is talking about sustainability, which is validated by opening opposition and closing opposition too. There's it says that the most important thing is to explain about how the relationship will be sustainable. So talking about growth is not much of a credit compared to closing government. Moreover, the weight of the government's team's argument regarding how choice makes it more standardized and it's not accessible compared to Spark's method of loving, it's more inclusive and whatnot. It's much more I can credit that more as a part of contribution compared to contribution brought by opening government. Moreover, there's a very potential point regarding if in the world where we prefer to choose to love someone by Spark, there's an option to separate with those individuals that that makes us unhappy or prevents you from getting stuck in an unhappy relationship. But the reason why I cannot credit this argument is because there's no further elaboration how it manifests, why unhappy relationship is bad, why you should have a happy relationship when the metric in this debate is about sustainability and compromise, which talks about the trade-offs and sacrifices that might lead to unhappiness to some certain extent, is conceded by most of the teams regarding on, yeah, there will be compromises. A lot of people can probably not be happy, but that's not important because the most important thing is sustainable relationships, stable relationship, yada, yada. Therefore, I cannot necessarily credit this argument as a part of OG's contribution. Let's compare OG to opposition bench, yeah? The reason why I cannot give OG higher than opposition bench is because opposition highly questioned OG's arguments and responded it very well. Number one, regarding comfort zone and how sparks can make you get out of comfort zone and whatnot. Opposition bench both have called out what's the harm of being in a comfort zone. Moreover, comfort zone makes you feel more comfortable in your relationship and whatnot. And opposition teams are able to establish why comfort zone is not necessarily a bad thing. That's why I cannot credit opening government's argument regarding why we need to get out of comfort zone and love someone with the spark method. But secondly, regarding growth of relationship or individual growth, opening government talked about how if we are loving someone with the sparks method, at some point there will be a middle ground because different personality will push each other to explore and push each other to accept each other and compromise. The question is that number one, why individuals will suddenly accept each other and how's the process, how can compromise happen and whatnot. And secondly, why is it likely that exploration will happen when there's a bunch of differences that is made? This is called out by opening opposition. Also, how if having to compromise in the beginning of relationship is difficult because the values of the individuals are not clear. You don't know the limits of these individuals, and it's harmful at a certain extent. And having a smaller things to compromise with, if you are in a relationship or love someone because of your choice, you know the compromises will not be as much as if you love someone with sparks. Therefore, I cannot necessarily credit opening government for argument regarding compromise and whatnot. And therefore, I cannot give OG higher than OO or CO. All right. Next comparison. I'm gonna compare closing opposition first with OO, and the reason why CO cannot be higher than OO, and then I'm gonna compare CO with CG. The reason why I cannot give CO higher than OO is because the main points given by CO is derivative with opening opposition. Those are number one, regarding how if you have a lot of different perspective, it will be bad your relationship because we be hard to compromise, and it's better if you have the same interests and whatnot. And that's one of the crux of the arguments that opening opposition have already explained well. Moreover, there's no effort to extend on this argument more to make it have a different framing and whatnot. Therefore, I cannot give a contribution point in this matter. But secondly, regarding your extension about beauty standards, the reason why I cannot credit this argument is because the question that that come up during debate is why this extension matters compared to the OO's explanation regarding familial standards to form a family or make good choices in status quo. Moreover, the reason why I can give the contribution points regarding this argument of expectations and whatnot to opening opposition is they have somewhat established the explanation regarding in status quo, having to love someone by method with the choice method, because in status quo you see people marrying their colleagues and whatnot. It's number one common. But secondly, relationships are associated or quote unquote cemented in families, like there's expectation for you to have children and whatnot, and that makes the relationship needs to be sustainable and whatnot. Therefore, I cannot necessarily contribute CO's explanation regarding beauty standards compared to the arguments regarding families, societal standards regarding relationships in opening opposition. All right, now comparing CO with CG. The reason why I cannot give CO higher than CG is because number one, a lot of CG's points are left unresponded. Number one talks about the choice and standardization, how choice is less accessible compared to Sparks' method in loving. I think this argument were established pretty well regarding how choices can only be limited to individuals with the same interests, that looks like people in the same race and religion and whatnot. The only response I got from closing there's no response at all to this argument, and I believe that this argument still stands until the end of the debate. But secondly, regarding human dynamics, how individuals can change, and that harms relationships, because if you choose someone by interest and mutual benefits, then changes makes your relationship susceptible to failed relationship. The only response I get from closing opposition is that there are things like hobby and sex fetish that cannot change, and even if human can change, choice argument are still better. The reason why I cannot credit this point higher is because the explanation brought by CG is much more well established than the responses brought by closing opposition. Like there are externalities like friends and families that impact your perspective, and then your partner can change criteria of their partner, for example. So responses coming from closing opposition does not necessarily negate, only explain that there are certain things that can change, but that does not I don't get why that will necessarily mean that choices will make the harms and the manifestation that closing government have already told us untrue or like harmful. Therefore, I cannot contribute CO on this response alone. And that's all for closing government and CO. That's why I cannot give CO higher than CG. Let's compare CG and opening oppositions. Crossbench win, which is pretty close. The reason why I cannot give CG higher than OO is because of few reasons. Number one, regarding the depth of explanation. Out of all of the analysis I've brought, there are two things that are a big that poses a big question, which is about expectation. In closing government, there's a slight explanation that is similar to OG, which is we are going to demand each other to compromise each other and spend a lot of time to reveal behavior. Therefore, we can compromise. And sacrificing is good to show commitment and not to expect anything from our partner. The question becomes, number one, how can you not have expectation in a relationship? Number two, why expectations are impactful to the relationship? And thirdly, how compromise will work if there are a bunch of things that you need to compromise with. Given that opening opposition have already explained how compromising is difficult because number one, values of individuals are not clear in the beginning of the relationship. Secondly, you don't know anyone's limits yet. Therefore, it's going to be really hard. Secondly, already explained that you need to touch on the things that matters, have smaller matters first and then bigger matters, and that can only happen if you are in a choice method relationships, because it's unlikely for you to compromise without compromising your happiness. Therefore, it's easier to work with each other in a choice relationship. Therefore, I cannot credit closing governments alone in this argument, given that this is also a burden that is posed by opening government regarding expectations and whatnot. Second, how I judge the argument or the extension brought by CG regarding sparks being inclusive and whatnot. The reason why I cannot credit this more than opening opposition's argument is because two things. Number one, I question the reason why caring about the majority of people's relationship like minorities is important, given that this motion is like this House prefers motion, which only applies to the debaters or individuals that involve this debate. So I don't understand why the third eye perspective is necessarily important in this debate. Like the framing of it is missing to reason why caring about inclusivity of love is important. Moreover, OO's explanation regarding having mutual benefit and not just temporary things, temporary feelings, and then having an intentional relationship, having a commitment and intimacy in practice in common and whatnot is much more personal. And all of the teams probably opening teams, also a bunch of closings agree, and like there's a consensus that this is personal to individuals. Therefore, I can credit opening opposition's argument more because it's the explanation regarding individual perspective and personalized perspective is much more relevant in this debate. So I cannot necessarily credit closing government more for their extension regarding minorities and the inclusivity of love on that alone. Lastly, on closing government's argument regarding dynamics of relationship and whatnot, and how I compare this with opening opposition's arguments. So CG I've already explained regarding human dynamics, it's dangerous because you can change perspectives and whatnot. Given that opening opposition cannot respond to this as like the opening debate, I think it was difficult for me to judge, given that CG also didn't accept POI coming from opening opposition, so I cannot necessarily judge this argument, even though it can be higher than other teams. The reason why, even though this argument can be superior than OO's argument, but I cannot necessarily just make CG win alone just because this argument is superior than OO's arguments. what I'm trying to say is that number one, it's unfair if I credit CG in this point alone just because it's superior than other arguments OO brought. But secondly, the reason why I cannot let CG win or give more credits to GG to get first compared to OO is because in other things, like about the choice and inclusivity of love regarding expectations, OO is much more superior. So the delta becomes CG have an advantage regarding the human dynamics argument, but OO have more advantages because they are able to answer the questions and the burdens that your team asked about inclusivity, why it's not important, and then why compromise it's harder and whatnot. Therefore, even with the superiority of your argument regarding human dynamics and its harms, I cannot give the entire credit to cozy government in order to win. That's why OO are still higher than CG. And that's all for my OA. If you need anything, if you want to give me feedbacks regarding my OA, and if you don't agree with my decision, you can contact me, guys, from WhatsApp. I will be glad to discuss it with you. Thank you, everyone.